Welcome to the Tom Sense Show, right now across America. Drop your questions into the chat whenever something hits you, because we take real questions on the fly all hour long. If it is sharp and worth talking about, I will bring it right onto the screen. We have trade fights blowing wide open to the north, think tanks running for cover in Washington, D.C., and the usual suspects panicking over secure elections. Let us get right into the news. The latest now on the trade showdown up north, and things are moving fast. Talks in Washington, D.C. broke down on Friday between United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Canadian Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc. President Donald Trump came out on Sunday defending new 50% tariffs on $20 billion worth of Canadian goods, posting that Canada wants all the perks of being an American state without actually being one. The new duties land right on Canadian dairy, wine, cement, and hockey gear, completely bypassing old trade carve-outs. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney held a press conference in Ottawa declaring that Canada is now at economic war and promising matching dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs starting on the 8th of September. The usual economists are crying that this will raise prices and wreck diplomatic ties before the big North American trade review. Here is what nobody in Ottawa wants to admit. Canada has spent decades taking American trade access completely for granted while running protectionist rackets on everything from cheese to lumber. Mark Carney wants to play the tough wartime prime minister on television, but the math does not change because you give a dramatic speech. When $20 billion of your exports get hit with a 50% wall, throwing a fit does not balance the ledger. Canada wants 50-star economic benefits while treating the border like a one-way street, and the bill just came due. Over in Washington, D.C., the Center for American Progress says it will not back down after President Donald Trump demanded a retraction of their crime study under threat of a $5 billion lawsuit. The legal team for the president gave the left-wing think tank until the close of business Friday to pull down a report from the 13th of July. That report claimed violent crime was already falling on its own, and that deploying the National Guard to major cities did not accomplish anything. Neera Tanden, who runs the group, put out a statement calling the lawsuit threat pure intimidation and said they will never retract their numbers. Legal scholars are already rushing to the cameras to explain that defamation cases against policy think tanks face massive hurdles under the First Amendment. Let us be completely honest about what is going on here. The Center for American Progress operates on the idea that if you put enough footnotes on a spreadsheet, people will forget what their own streets look like. They want everyone to believe that crime just magically evaporated while local leaders were defunding police departments, and that uniformed troops providing backup had zero effect. If their numbers were as rock solid as they claim, they would welcome the courtroom discovery process to prove it. Instead, they are hiding behind press releases because the second you test their math against reality, the whole narrative falls apart. The Iranian military made an announcement over the weekend that tells you everything about where their heads are at. Brigadier General Mohammad Akraminia told state media that Iran is officially scrapping its long-standing defensive posture and moving to an offensive military doctrine. They claim lessons learned from recent regional fighting forced them to restructure their entire armed forces. At the exact same time, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian warned neighboring countries and international partners not to cooperate with the sanctions campaign coming out of Washington, D.C. Tehran made it clear that any country helping the United States isolate Iranian banking channels and maritime oil shipments will be treated as an enemy combatant. Western defense analysts are sounding the alarm, saying this official doctrine change increases the danger of miscalculation in the Persian Gulf. What this really shows is that economic pressure is squeezing the regime right where it hurts. When a government runs out of money and loses leverage at the negotiating table, it starts making loud speeches about changing its doctrine. Declaring that your military is suddenly offensive does not replenish frozen bank accounts or fix an economy suffocating under maritime enforcement. Iran is finding out that threatening the entire neighborhood only works when you have the cash to back it up. And right now, the sanctions are doing the talking. In southern Thailand, a major wave of violence struck overnight into Sunday, leaving 3 people injured and infrastructure damaged across several border districts. The Internal Security Operations Command in Thailand confirmed that 51 coordinated arson and bombing attacks hit targets throughout the province of Narathiwat and nearby areas. The attackers struck telecommunications towers, local government buildings, utility setups, and convenience stores in a synchronized assault. Thai security forces quickly moved in to set up armed checkpoints, clear burning tire barricades, and put an emergency curfew in place across the hardest-hit communities. Authorities suspect regional separatist groups carried out the strikes to disrupt local governance and show off their operational coordination. Government officials in Bangkok condemned the violence and deployed extra security forces to protect key transit routes and restore order. It is a serious escalation in a region that has faced long-standing security challenges, and the deliberate targeting of everyday infrastructure shows an attempt to paralyze daily life for ordinary civilians. The immediate priority for security forces on the ground is restoring basic services, locking down the transit corridors, and making sure the people responsible are tracked down before another coordinated strike can take place. The mainstream media is in full meltdown mode over election integrity. Legal advocates and progressive scholars spent Sunday warning that the White House might use national emergency declarations ahead of the upcoming midterm elections this November. The outrage kicked off after federal agencies published findings regarding non-citizen voting, alongside calls from conservatives for emergency oversight. When a reporter asked President Donald Trump if he would consider declaring a national security emergency for election administration, he answered simply that stranger things have happened. That single comment sent constitutional lawyers sprinting to the microphones to lecture the public about Article I state powers and promise immediate legal challenges. Democrats in Congress are calling the mere discussion an attack on democracy, while conservatives are pointing out that securing the ballot box is basic common sense. If someone gets furious the moment you suggest making sure only eligible citizens vote, you have to ask what kind of system they are trying to protect. The left insists that requiring clean voter rolls and secure procedures is somehow dangerous, but ordinary Americans lock their front doors every night because they value what is inside. Calling emergency security measures an assault on democracy is the standard defense from people who benefit most from the loopholes. Congress is heading straight into another September budget brawl, and neither side is backing down. The House comes back on the 31st of August, followed by the Senate on the 14th of September, with the government funding deadline set for midnight on the 30th. The Senate already passed a stopgap bill to keep money flowing through the 11th of December, but House conservatives are demanding major spending cuts and strict border security riders before approving a single penny. On top of the funding fight, lawmakers have to deal with expiring healthcare tax credits under the Affordable Care Act and the National Defense Authorization Act. Democrats are running their midterm campaigns entirely on healthcare costs, while Republicans are pushing tax relief and deregulation. Budget analysts are warning that a failure to cut a deal could trigger a partial government shutdown just weeks before Americans cast their ballots. Every single year we watch the same routine. The establishment waits until the final hour, claims the sky will fall without a giant spending package, and expects taxpayers to swallow the bill. House conservatives are completely right to draw a line on spending and border enforcement. If Washington, D.C. cannot keep the country secure and balance a basic budget, the answer is not to keep rubber stamping the status quo. That is our broadcast for this hour. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I will see you right back here next time.